Good morning, everybody. For those who do not know me, I am Dr. Elisa Mori Torres. Up to December, I was a member of the medical staff at the Glen Rose. Then I retired from the Glen Rose, and now I'm doing palliative care next door. I am here as board member for the St. Albert Sturgeon Association to introduce our speaker, David Maginley. He is a spiritual counselor at Queen E2 Health Science Center at Halifax, Nova Scotia. He's also an award-winning author of Beyond Surviving Cancer and Your Spiritual Journey. David has also survived cancer 4 times, which resulted in a profound near-death experience and explorations in the nature of consciousness and the connection of body, mind, and spirit. He knows what it is like to have cancer from both sides of the bed and has a sense of this life from both sides of the veil. He is ordained with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Canada, specialist with the Canadian Association for Spiritual Care, member of the Canadian Association for Psychological Oncology, the International Association of Near-Death Studies, and is featured in the documentaries Here, Right Now, and When You Die. Reverend McKinley works with cancer patients, his experience as a cancer survivor, and his close connection with healthcare professionals at the Halifax uh, hospital gives him an insight into the complexity of patient care and the burden that healthcare professionals, patients, and families share. In recognition of National Hospice and Palliative Care Week 2022, the St. Albert Hospice Association would like to bring you Compassion Fatigue, the Cholesterol of Care by Dr. David Maginley.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining online to address this really important issue. Because when working in hospice or palliative care or geriatric care, when working with patients who have significant and advanced progressive disease, we are swimming in suffering. And it's critical to learn how to care for the self, because otherwise, the cholesterol of care, right? It can take us out. Let's talk heart to heart, and I'm going to be sharing some statistics, some qualities of compassion fatigue as compared to burnout and vicarious trauma, and how to listen to the body, mitigate burnout, and share some personal stories, because I'm addressing this not only from a research or an academic and a professional side, but also a personal side, because there was a period in my 22-year career working in cancer, intensive and palliative care where I burnt out and I needed to take time off. So I want to share with you the inside experience of what that is like. So first of all, Viktor Frankl said that which gives light must endure burning. Compassion, necessarily, by the definition of the term, to suffer with, requires that we open ourselves to others' suffering. And that is going to capsize you if you don't have your keel deep in the water. This is a term my father taught me well, because he was a naval commander and an avid sailor. And he would take me out on the boat and teach me not only how to sail, but explain the physics of sailing. Now, have any of you who have sailed know that while the wind is pushing against the sail and causing the boat to lean, there's a counterweight way down deep under the hull that is keeping the boat from capsizing. A wise captain knows how to feel the wind, feel the boat, and direct into the wind to an angle maximum of 45 degrees, which will cause the boat to lean tight, but You don't turn in so much to the wind that you're going to capsize. And it uses the force of that emotional storm, or we can say the force of suffering. Counterweight is keeping it balanced. Then it moves forward. The boat moves forward in the direction you're pointing it. The people move forward by engaging the force of suffering to do what? To deepen humanity, to clarify and amplify love, to connect to the deepest inner wisdom of navigating the storm. Now, as a point, as my father had done sometimes, when you need to turn into the wind, you need to turn into the wind so the boat doesn't lean at all, but is now, you let the sails loose and flapping free, and you give the boat a rest. Compassion or compassion fatigue is a signal from your body first, then your emotions and your mind, that you need to turn into the wind and let the tension off the sail and just sit and rest. We don't get to do that often in healthcare because we move from one case after another without a break in between. Healthcare workers suffer from compassion fatigue not because they are in such deep waters of suffering, but because they don't get a break between cases. So one of the most basic things you can do, a gift to yourself, is to take time between cases. Does your hospital system provide that opportunity? It doesn't need to be long. It can be 5 minutes. Unfortunately, the administrative, right, the non-direct patient care demands of the profession will swallow you, will consume all of that in between time. So then we're left with time after work to decompress and to process the dimensions of suffering that we have experienced. Now, how do you do that when you work 12-hour shifts with 3 on, 2 off, or whatever schedule there is? Difficult, because the first 24 hours of downtime of your time off are usually spent sleeping, recuperating, right, chilling. And if you're experiencing some burnout, then withdrawing is often a coping mechanism because you just want quiet. You don't want to answer any questions. You don't want to respond to any requests. You just want to chill. That's why Netflix is my favorite addiction. What's yours? There's so many to choose from. Unfortunately, many of them are maladaptive. Alcohol, eating, right? Binge eating, gambling, right? There are so many accessible addictions to pull your instinct to self-soothe, self-medicate. It's critical to recognize those urges. What is your coping mechanism? Is it maladaptive or is it healthy? In a study done by the CBC, so it's an informal research survey, but it's important, and I'll show you the slide I'll send the slides later on. It showed that amongst a cohort of about 400 nurses, the majority of them, over 70%, said that they were experiencing burnout and that they would leave the profession within 2 to 5 years. That was their prediction on their endurance. Doctors were also surveyed. Now, this was a comprehensive research study, and it was of thousands of doctors throughout Canada. And what it found was the vast majority of doctors, almost 80%, experiencing significant burnout. A minority is about 40%, so that's still significant. About 40% were experiencing depression and sadness. And then I think it's about 20%, still a significant number, had contemplated either leaving the profession or, and this was the frightening part, self-harm, including suicide, all due to the inability, the lack of opportunity to process the trauma that they had been exposed to, the intense emotional and existential burden upon their own life. So when is it going to show up? You'll notice compassion fatigue showing up not so much at work. Here you probably are on your game. It shows up in your downtime, on your days off. Now, I remember that well. I had been working in cancer care for about 15 years and intensive and palliative care. And we had a long run, a terrible year of really tragic bad cases. And of course, my work as a chaplain is purely emotional. I don't have technical stuff. I'm going to the heart of suffering. I'm help people process their grief, their existential distress, to wrestle with mortality, and to vocalize. They will express to me before they will to their family members the depths of their fears and their concerns. You can't help but absorb that. If you're going to swim through suffering, you're going to get wet. I was noticing some changes in me. I was getting irritable and grumpy on my days off. I was not able to laugh and to enjoy myself. And then I found my dreams changing. I was scratching my head in my sleep and I was drawing blood. I was calling out, having nightmares in my sleep. And it was certainly getting bad. And then I was not able to multitask. Well, I'm pretty bad at that at the best of times. And I found my speech was changing. I was having problems forming complete sentences, finding words. I was trying to push the words out. They were in my head and I couldn't get them out my mouth, right? My frontal lobe was disengaging because of stress. Finally, one day, I was at a coffee shop with my wife and I couldn't even order a coffee. I was swallowed in sadness and I couldn't identify anything specific. There wasn't any specific case or specific reason. I was getting frustrated with myself, but clearly something was amiss. I decided to run an experiment. I came to work on a weekend, Sunday afternoon, and I sat with a patient and we talked, and I noticed how I was on my game. My head was clear, my heart was focused, my words came without any effort. Then, as soon as I left the hospital and walked out into the sunshine, I was swallowed in sadness again. I could feel the tears welling up. So I scheduled a sabbatical. Fortunately, that coincided with a book tour that I was about to go on. So I just took the entire year off, and it was so rejuvenating. When you're experiencing really advanced or somatic, because your body's going to tell you, compassion fatigue, you must remove yourself from suffering. You must take some time off to repair. During that year, I removed myself from suffering. I embarked on an exercise campaign and I stuck with it. I haven't been consistent since then. I'm not saying I'm intelligent, but back then I knew what I needed to do. I employed a meditation practice, so I was returning to my spiritual roots. I saw a counselor, a spiritual director. I changed my diet. I drank more water, surprising the effect that had. And I began to dive into my hobbies and crafts. Do you have a recreational activity? Do you have an activity that renews your heart and your mind, your imagination, your creativity, and is totally different than work? It's critical because you are more than your role at work. You are this dynamic, living, creative, amazing human being that is helping others, supporting their engagement with life. They're fighting for more moments of life, right? But then you go home and you may not have a life on your own. You may be experiencing advanced compassion fatigue. So I say advanced compassion fatigue. That's another word for vicarious trauma. Burnout is short term. You have a difficult case or a difficult week and you're just exhausted, but you bounce back. Then compassion fatigue is moderate. It's embedded more within you. It's beginning to compromise your time off, your well-being, your ability to multitask. You're finding sadness is growing within you. And then advanced becomes vicarious trauma. And that can be a permanent injury on your orientation to life itself. It can result in cynicism, depression, addictions. How do you know? Well, your body will keep the score. In fact, that's the name of an excellent book I highly recommend. The Body Keeps the Score. Listen to your body. How will it manifest and speak to you? Stomach issues, digestive issues. I found that whenever, on my days off, if any of my family members asked me a question, what would you like for dinner? I received it as another problem to address. Talk about a distortion, right? But I could not break out of that suffering, that deep water of suffering that was now within me. So my stomach would start to churn. There were times my wife were just watching TV and she would hear it and she'd say, "What are you thinking of?" And yeah, it would be work. So muscle issues also will show up. Head, neck, muscle fatigue, aches, pains that are chronic, migraines. This also was a symptom I experienced. I began to lose my peripheral vision. Silent migraines. Fortunately, they were painful, but my peripheral vision and then my entire vision on the left side would just disappear. And I was able to understand what it is not to be able to see, for what the concept of nothing actually is. So are you getting migraines? What other physical symptoms would show up? GI issues. It's going to show up in diarrhea. It's going to show up in headaches and migraines, changes in vision, behavioral issues, lack of ability to enjoy life, addictive behaviors, irritability, hyper control, a desire to only do things one way, right? That can be an expression of wanting to control the environment when you're actually finding it existentially overwhelming. Sadness, depression, snappy, inability to tolerate strong emotions. So if someone is grumpy or says something a bit sharp, you may respond in a much more overt, powerful, out of proportioned way. Okay. Sleeping more, eating for comfort, right? Spending more. Retail therapy for a time, well, even now is a go-to of mine. I try to keep it reasonable and don't abuse Amazon, right? They'll want you to. So it's going to show up in those behaviors as well. So listening to the body and noticing the behaviors, which your family members will notice first, they'll point it out. Why? Because our mind, our ego, will try to maintain equilibrium. We have a tendency to overestimate how well we are doing and how smart we are, as well as having a hypercritical voice that beats us up internally. So it's a profound and amusing reality that I am the person most likely to deceive myself in how well I'm actually doing. So rely on others. That's why it's a good idea to ask your family members, how am I? What do you notice? Or to go to coworkers and ask the same thing. Your coworkers may be one of the greatest resources to process compassion, fatigue, and vicarious trauma. The lunchroom, where you can sit and laugh, where the humor can get dark, where you can share the stories of the people that you're cared for, where you're able to process in a small and casual but ritual way a difficult death, right? Or the death of someone you've cared for years. We become attached to our patients, and that is a testament to your noble and beautiful heart. So it's a good thing. even though we try to keep those professional boundaries very healthy, very good. Some attachment is required in order for a therapeutic relationship to exist with the people that we care for. So, compassion fatigue is inevitable. I want to emphasize that it's a sign that you're doing your job well. You're bringing your whole self to the bedside. You're not compartmentalizing in a compromising way your own humanity. Everyone's going to experience it eventually. The key is to have regular steps to mitigate it and regulate it. In fact, research on nurses coping finds that there are what they call phases of wisdom. 1 to 3 months after graduation, there is the enthusiastic phase where you're in the environment you've been training for and you're ready and ambitious and excited about providing care. But within the first year, usually the exposure to suffering results in some frustration, right? Some somatic signs showing up at home in your body, right? Worry about the patients all the time or thinking about them, perhaps some GI issues showing up in your body. Then there can be a withdrawal and a grumpiness. This is still within 9 to 12 months. But if you regulate this well, then you move to a phase of integration where you're finding your keel and how to keep it deep in the water. You're able to enter into suffering and not abandon any part of the patient's experience. You're able to tune in to the nuances of their own life struggle and find that it doesn't destabilize you. In fact, it enriches you. When you regulate compassion fatigue through good self-care, you're able then to swim even deeper in the waters of suffering and instinctively know how to navigate it. In the end, by the 2-year mark, you can become someone who is so refined and stable in this intuitive wisdom of compassion that you're able to become a secret mentor that others admire. They may not point it out to you, but they are inspired by you. It's not something of the head. It's something of the heart and very much of the body. So one of the things I really encourage you to do for regulation of compassion fatigue is, of course, exercise. Nothing's as wise as just moving it through the body. And we're talking about sweating for 20 minutes. It doesn't need to be really intense, right? But just build up a sweat. 20 minutes every day. Could be taking the dog for a walk, or it could be joining an exercise class and really burning it. Exercise is intelligent. The body knows how to process the stress through movement. You don't need to understand why you're stressed or what to do with it. You just need to move. But maybe you're not able to, right? Maybe you, like me, are wishing you had started that decades ago. Well, another way to process the compassion fatigue is actually not through the body, it's through the mind. Mindfulness and meditation have been shown to be so effective at regulating distress and vicarious trauma that over 700 Canadian hospitals have adopted it, and even more throughout the United States. The big ones in the States, Tom Baker Cancer Center, Memorial Sloan Kettering, Mayo Clinic, they employ mindfulness programs for their staff because they see the benefits. Mindfulness is in the moment, mindful awareness, a brief meditation moment, right? Could be 5 minutes. Meditation is a drawn out practice of mindfulness. So it could be 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or even longer. I'd like you to think, though, of mindfulness and meditation in the same way you would of exercise. So I'll give you an example. Here is a weight. It's a very, very light weight because it's a stress ball. I keep one on my desk. But imagine it's a 5-pound weight or a 20-pound weight. To build the muscle in the bicep, What you have to do, of course, is lift the weight, do a rep, and then let the weight go. Then you do another rep. Put a strain on the muscle to damage it, and then let the weight go. If you lifted up a weight and just held it there would be no muscle growth. It's in the back and forth that the muscle is strained, and then it grows, of course, during a period of sleep and providing nourishment. The same thing is true of your heart and your mind and your well-being. In mindfulness, we follow first the STOP acronym, S-T-O-P, which means S is stop what you're doing. T means take a breath. You can do this right now. Take a breath. O means observe your own experience. Observe. It's called interoception. Observe yourself. And then P means proceed. In mindfulness and in meditation, you stop, take a breath to center yourself, right? Taking a breath is all that's needed to get your keel back in the water. Then you observe your thoughts. You have your thoughts. They do not have you. And in fact, delightful realization is you don't need to believe everything you think. What a relief. So you observe your thoughts. On average, a person will have a thought every 3 to 5 seconds, even worse if you're addicted to TikTok. So every 3 to 5 seconds, a thought is going to go through. Watch that happen. Don't try to stop it. Meditation and mindfulness is not about having a calm mind. That's a side effect. Meditation is about observing the mind and letting it do what it does, which is think. So no judgment, no filtering, no criticism, no interpreting. And the key is no attachment. This is the hard thing, because a thought is going to come along and it's going to take you by the hand and it's going to say, hey, come down this road. In mindfulness and meditation, we become aware of that. Oh, I've noticed I've wandered down the road. I'm caught up with that thought. And then you come back to the center and watch your thoughts. Then another will grab you and take you down the road. And then you come back and watch the thought. That is back and forth reps. It's in the back and forth, getting caught up with your thought, realizing that, observing it, and coming back to the center with a breath. It's in the back and forth that you're doing meditation. It is not in achieving a calm, peaceful mind. So by observing your thoughts, you're realizing, I have my thoughts, they don't have me. When you do this for a prolonged period of time, meditation, something interesting happens. Not only does your stress go down, it is processed, not only physically, but electrically and chemically within your body and your brain. Funny things happen to your brain on meditation. There was an experiment where monks who had been meditating for decades were put in an fMRI, and what they found was their brain structure was significantly different, especially the anterior cingulate cortex, this area that regulates the information from the amygdala moving up to the neocortex. So that area will have greater cortical thickness, right? Greater density. So the researchers decided, what if we could make that happen or support that and see if it happens in the most difficult of subjects to analyze or to embark upon with meditation. So they decided the most difficult subjects were college-aged men. They took them and they did a before and after fMRI. In between, they did an 8-week meditation course. So for 2 hours, they were in this course, but they only needed to meditate for intervals of about 10 minutes, cumulatively for about an hour a day. Well, what do you know? The anterior cingulate cortex began to show greater density, greater thickness after 8 weeks of 10-minute interval meditations. That's pretty significant. Of course, meditation, interoception, deep breathing, is going to facilitate the relaxation response. It's going to bring you back to yourself. And again, this doesn't require therapy. You don't need to analyze, you don't need to understand, you don't need to identify the patterns. You just need to recognize the bodies and the behavioral signs of burnout, and then do what's good for you. Take 5-10 minutes every day and just be present. That's a rare skill in today's society. We are addicted to our devices, to scrolling, which is designed to induce a dopamine hit, right? They want you hooked on that. The technology is designed for that. And the key is to put that away. More than that, shut it off and put it away. Walk out into nature, the natural healing environment. Breathe. Feel the gift of ordinary things. A lovely way to practice mindfulness is with food. Life is too short for bad wine, so always choose good quality products. Chocolate is a great go-to. And eat it slowly. With your meal, don't wolf it down. Slow down. Turn towards the moment. Feel the gift of ordinary things. Become embedded in this moment. Even when this moment is difficult, when feeling sadness because of a patient's death, stress because of patient care and work overload, right? Slow down and don't try to fix yourself. Stay with your own distress. Do not abandon any part of your experience, because the goal in this is not to be good or calm or cool or collected. The goal is to be authentic. The goal is to be real. And if you're really messed up, then to be real and compassionate with that will make the waters still once again, will bring you back to your heart's wisdom and enable you to move forward in a healthy relationship with yourself and a healthy relationship with your family, because they will be noticing and absorbing the cost of care. Over the years, this can make a break a person. It is profoundly important. So it's important for the system as well. Do you work in a healthcare system that will support your well-being? Most will have an EAP, an employee assistance program. They will have counselors available, but it's difficult to access, especially during COVID times. Now our anxiety is even higher, and there's a war going on that threatens to spill out and become even greater. So the whole world is naturally on edge. No wonder retail therapy, as well as alcohol consumption and addictions and depression, are up across the board. As a healthcare provider supporting others who are facing significant end-of-life issues or chronic disabilities or things that compromise their functioning, don't compromise your own functioning. Now, spirituality, I must address that. Now, watching the time, I want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A. I don't know if we can have that maybe in the chat section. But spirituality has been shown to be a robust way of keeping your keel deep in the water. And I distinguish that from religion. Religion is a corporate practice of a belief system within a framework of specific doctrines and rituals. Spirituality is your inner orientation to life itself. I like to say that spirituality is the immanent, internal, and transcendent sense of the numinous. The numinous is a word contrived by a Lutheran theologian. Now, I'm a Lutheran, so I got to make a plug for the club. He's a Lutheran theologian from the 1800s. He said the numinous is that sense of the otherness, right, or the sacred, or something so vast, so huge, so beyond your capacity to articulate, that is both attractive and alluring, as well as something that could annihilate you. Right? Now, the best experience of this that I've had is when I go out and photograph the stars at night. I wish I could show you the slide I had of that. So I'm into photography, and I use long exposures and wide fast lenses to drink in the light of the stars. And under that canopy of celestial glory, I feel utterly insignificant. My heart is racing, my breath is going deeper, and I long to be enveloped by it, for I know I emanate from it. That's a spiritual experience. Or it's that internal sense of something, we call it spirit, within your heart, something that apprehends you, right? Because it's so much bigger. This is universally experienced. It does not depend on belief system. It's not about any particular religious tradition. So a sense of connection to that numinous, to that something other, to that orientation to life, that ability to savor and go, wow, to the moments, right? That seems to embed and support within us a resilience in the face of suffering. And more than that, spirituality, a healthy spirituality, has been shown to assist a person in engaging suffering to deepen their humanity, to amplify life. Right? And let's face it, we all have to admit that the points in our lives of greatest growth are probably the points of greatest struggle. Suffering is pain times resistance. So this is one of my final points I want to emphasize. We increase our suffering by resisting its reality. This is particularly true for us, for the people we care for, and for ourselves when we're going through a very difficult time. But a weird thing happens when you turn into the wind, turn into suffering, let the sail loose, don't resist it, just relax and let the sail flutter. Let the mess be what it is. And breathe into it and observe yourself. You discover that you can endure. And indeed, doing that regularly, this is meditation and self-care, doing it regularly through your workday will likely, I find it never fails actually, result in you leaving your workday feeling a great sense of purpose, an odd sense even of exhilaration, a sense of satisfaction with meaningful encounters, conversations, and efforts that help lift others up, which is the definition of a leader. A leader is a person who lifts others up. So it's beautiful. I mentioned at the beginning, Viktor Frankl said that that which gives light must endure burning. And the goal is to shine, because the world needs your light. To shine because it's a manifestation of love, right? Love for yourself, love in the world. I'm not speaking of love as an emotion here. I'm talking about it as an entire state of consciousness. Besides, if God is love, then those are synonyms. If that's the case, let love be your spiritual practice, right? Let love be your spiritual practice. The fact that you're in this career means you're already shining. Will you do so for yourself? So as we wrap up, I want to give you some resources. And I don't have the slides to show you, but I'll just share some of the ones that I remember. The Figley Institute, F-I-G-L-E-Y. So if you put in Figley Institute Compassion Fatigue, you're going to find their website and their resources. Among them, and I'm going to email these resources to Carol or to Eliza, and then they can be available for you. Among them is a handbook that emphasizes that we have an ethical responsibility to take care of our hearts and souls, to address compassion fatigue before it becomes destabilizing. Treat it prophylactically treat it the same as we treat pain. We give pain medication on a 4-hour basis. We stay ahead of the pain because once you're chasing it, you're kind of in a losing game. The same with compassion fatigue. Treat it regularly each day as a gift to yourself. It's not selfish. It's not indulgent. Do it in a healthy way. A little bit of chocolate, not the whole bar. A little bit of wine, not the whole bottle. Right? A little bit of time. A little bit of time so you don't have to take a whole year off. So the Figley Institute, excellent. Another one, Compassion, Tend Academy, TEND, Tend Academy, based in Montreal. This is Canada's leader in supporting healthcare workers in mitigating compassion fatigue. So Francois Midra is, I believe that's her last name. Oh, she's so good. Is the head of the organization. Go to Tend Academy, or I think it's tend.ca, and pull up their resources. Now they have those resources for individual healthcare workers and for institutions. They do work with entire health networks. So in good patient or good employee care and good self-care, because that helps employee retention, it helps improve efficiency, it helps decrease sick time and downtime, right? It's really good. Helps improve workplace culture. So Tend Academy. In the United States, my favorite organization is Schwartz Institute. The Schwartz Institute, I think, is based in New York. My goodness, they host a workshop every year, a conference on compassion fatigue. So if you go to their website, put in Schwartz Institute Compassion Fatigue, and you'll see it also is directed just for healthcare providers. And if you click on, I believe it's the tab furthest to the left, and you're going to be able to access previous conferences and presentations for free. Or you can participate online in the current ones. Really excellent resources. So Schwartz Academy as well. Joy and laughter, humor and creativity. These are ones that don't require an internet connection, like I wish I had had. What do you enjoy? What do you love? Is there a hobby you've been neglecting? Is there a dream that you have not been pursuing? Maybe also employ rituals to process your trauma. Do you have an original ritual? After the death of a patient, one I really like is to write a letter of gratitude to that patient. Then I burn the letter and I let the smoke rise to the spirits. Or to sit with the body after the patient has died in contemplation, in grief and gratitude, and in a deeper awareness of my own mortality. This is one of the most profound lessons of life. With your colleagues, debrief. Doesn't take long. Share stories. Share special moments. Or have a group ritual. Wouldn't that be lovely? Right? To honor the lives and the experiences that you've had. This is going to improve your health at work, the health of your workplace, and your health at home. It's going to bring you back to the gift of yourself, and it's going to deepen your appreciation of ordinary things. Take a mindfulness moment, feel the sunshine on your face, feel the breeze. Hopefully it's warm by now. I know Alberta has been through some rough weather. Right? Take time with your food. Use the STOP acronym. Slow down, take a breath, observe yourself, then proceed. Right? And listen to your body, because your body will tell you before your mind does. It's asking you to pay attention. So be proactive in that. And as I said just recently, please take care of yourself and shine, because the world needs your light. Okay. I'm going to wrap it up there, and I wish you all the best. I will send my slides and my resources so you can dive deeper. Take a look at those websites, Tend Academy, Schwartz Institute, and Shine. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you so much, David, for a wonderful presentation. We'll open up, since the rounds is set up as a webinar, participants are only able to ask questions through the Q&A and chat box. So we'll leave that open for anybody. We can help moderate any questions. Yes, Glenda mentioned, wonderful, thoughtful, and compassionate presentation. Thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom with us.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I only share what I've learned from others. I can't say much of it is original. Among them, I'd like you to consider, in the Buddhist tradition, the goal is to become a bodhisattva, a warrior of compassion. So powerful to consider. You are a warrior of compassion. There was a question, I think, that came up there.
Yeah, Wilson asked, would you say suffering is pain without meaning?
Yes, and that's another really good framework to understand it. I like to say suffering is pain times resistance, and it's not original. That came from Christian Neff, who has written beautiful stuff about compassion, fatigue, and burnout, and suffering. When there is meaning, when we forge and build meaning, then we're able to say not why am I suffering, but what am I going to do with it? How am I going to engage suffering to deepen awareness of myself and deepen humanity and actually come into solidarity with others who suffer. Great Buddhist practice, and that is Tonglen, where you breathe in, you identify your suffering, your stress, your burnout, or it could be physical pain, and then you breathe in more of it from others who have that. I use this with patients there. I say, breathe in the suffering of the patient in the next room, add it to yours, and breathe back your compassion with the words, I understand, I'm with you. My goodness, I'm just helping them turn into the wind and loosen their sail. It's powerful stuff. Any other comments?
Yes, we have a question here. Why we accept the suffering as a norm? Why do we not say enduring? Then we can try and alleviate suffering as opposed to accepting it.
Yes, accepting suffering doesn't mean we don't try to alleviate it. In fact, when we accept it, then we are more orientated to a position where we can comprehend it and how best to address it. Because the suffering is saying something important. We don't want to let it sit there. We want to work with its wisdom. In the body, that's done through good medical care, right? Through the mind and the soul, it's speaking to the integrity of the person. Existential distress is that which threatens the integrity of the identity of a person, right? So our ego identity is being deconstructed and compromised through the lived experience of increased limitation, sorrow, right? It can result in the shadow aspect, the dark night of the soul. So it's asking for care, for compassion. It's asking for intervention. But the place we start is with deep awareness of its dimensions. So we're not resisting it. In the same way, physical pain has been found to go down when you place mindful, compassionate awareness upon it. Your relationship to the experience shifts. So it's not a black and white. We don't want to just let suffering be there. We do want to address it, but we start by being fully present with it. I hope that makes sense. Okay, well, if there are no other comments, I wish you all the best in your personal and professional life. And I'm really grateful to contribute a small part to your self-care.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again for a wonderful presentation. Thank you everyone for attending and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Okay.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Take care. Bye-bye.